McMahon likes to see himself as a trendsetter, the big kahuna that takes entertainment in new directions and pushes buttons that no one had previously dared to push. Many times this has resulted in great ideas and concepts such as WrestleMania, Hulkamania, the Gobbledygooker, and the invention of Monday Night Raw back in 1993. Since then, wrestling's flagship television show has produced countless iconic angles, but has also produced its fair share of graphic, tasteless, and downright disturbing moments. Many of these were during the fabled Attitude Era, as tasteless car crash TV was the norm at the time. What is deemed as disturbing is subjective, and how you react to things can be determined on how old you were when you first saw them, alongside many other circumstances. What's shocking to a mid-90s kid might seem tame now, and vice versa, but there are some things that are still as disturbing today as they were when they first happened. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 most disturbing moments in Raw history. Join us! Oh, and by the way, potential trigger warnings ahead. Loads of them. Number 10, the formation of the NEXUS. We've all talked about it enough to save going into massive detail, so here's the skinny on the NEXUS debut. CENA vs Punk, Wade Barrett turns up, 7 other angry NXT lads follow suit, absolute pandemonium, Michael Cole poos his undies and flees, destruction, devastation, unbridled violence. It was cool then, it's still cool now. One of the reasons the NEXUS's introduction to the WWE Universe sticks in our mind, though, is how graphic and real the attack felt. This just wasn't wrestling. Justin Gabriel's solemn 450 splash aside, this was violence. It was shocking, it was disturbing, especially if you were a major brand sponsoring WWE at the time. If reports are to be believed, so appalled were advertising bigwigs by the graphic nature of the angle that calls were made to WWE to fire Daniel Bryan or lose sponsorship. Whether it was Bryan hocking a fat wedge of phlegm into John Cena's face before booting his head in like a Roberto Carlos free kick, or his unprovoked strangulation of Justin Roberts with Justin's own tie, you can kinda see where they were coming from. I mean, if you aren't haunted by the image of a hapless Justin Roberts struggling for air as the best wrestler of a generation turns him into his own personal gimp, then you probably need help. WWE curtailed to the controversy, let Bryan go for a bit, and drastically scaled back the NEXUS's viciousness. Shame. Number 9, Taker crucifies Austin. From a storyline standpoint, Ministry of Darkness Taker was arguably the best period of the dead man's career. After years of bobbing around the top of the WWE card with no real motivation, Taker decided to give up his day job of literally burying people and instead become some kind of satanic priest. As satanic priests often want to do, Taker enlisted a gang of lads in black leather and decided he wanted to batter Stone Cold Steve Austin and sacrifice Stephanie McMahon. Naturally. Taker battered Austin on an episode of Raw in December 1998, and with the assistance of his druids and a proud pallbearer barking instructions, tied the Texas rattlesnake to a massive version of his Undertaker symbol thingy and crucified him in front of the Titantron before promising to bury him alive. Like we've said many times on this channel, the Attitude Era was utterly bonkers at times. The visual itself is kinda cool, but it was very, very controversial, sparking outrage and disturbing viewers and religious groups alike across America. Okay, it wasn't nearly as horrific as Raven crucifying the Sandman in ECW in 1996, but considering the reach and popularity of the WWE in 1998, this was a ballsy and possibly ill-conceived angle to put on network television. Still, kinda cool though. Number 8, Choppy PP. Okay, hands up, who has an irrational fear of getting their todger chopped off by a Japanese gang boss with an ornamental sword? Well, you're not alone. Val Venus was fond of women, shall we say, and engaged in a bit of how's your father with the wife of Yamaguchi-san, aka the boss of Japanese street punks Kaientai. Now, this was way before Kaientai was just Taka and Funaki being badly dubbed on Sunday Night Heat. This was when Funaki, Dick Togo, and Men's Teo ran roughshod over Michinoku Pro in Japan before appearing in ECW and then WWE in 1998. Outraged by the philandering Valboski getting to grips with his wife, Yamaguchi-san delivered his own perverted version of justice by stringing a naked Venus up from the ceiling and cutting his meat and two veg off with a samurai sword. While the angle was comical, quote, "I choppy your pee-pee," end quote, and the payoff was that Yamaguchi-san missed Val's little pal thanks to interference from real-life castration victim John Wayne Bobbitt, it was still an unsettling moment in WWE history. Okay, this one may seem a little bit silly in hindsight, but Jack the Jobber is genuinely still haunted by this circumcision from hell, as well he should. Number 7, Terri Runnels miscarries. Unfortunately, this isn't the only time in WWE history that a miscarriage angle has been featured on TV. The fact that I even have to say this is horrible, but while Lita's is more well known, Terri Runnels' miscarriage was arguably more shocking. To set up a Jerry Springer-esque love triangle between Terri Runnels, face-painted pervert Goldust, and yes, Val Venus, the story was put in place that the estranged Mrs. Goldust had been sleeping with the big Valboski and had been impregnated by him. Goldust and Venus soon came to blows before it was revealed that Val had a vasectomy, so couldn't have fathered Terri's child, and Goldust just didn't want anything to do with her. Somehow, in this tawdry angle, Terri was positioned as the heel because I'm guessing Vince Russo wrote this, and New York's favourite bro doesn't have a great track record of writing for female performers. Needing a get-out clause because Terri clearly wasn't pregnant in reality, WWE had D'Lo Brown accidentally knock Terri off the ring apron, causing a miscarriage. To make the angle more real, we were shown a clearly distraught Terri wheeled to the back, sobbing and worrying about her baby, while D'Lo apologized profusely. It's really, really horrible stuff to make light of. This one just isn't nice or entertaining in any way, shape or form. It was crass, unnecessary, and handled in a way that was too real to sit comfortably with a 90s wrestling audience. The angle was quickly dropped and Terri became D'Lo's manager instead because, why not? Number 6, John Cena, Roadkill. Big granite-headed champion of the people, John Cena was comically overpowered during his WWE peak. Seemingly indestructible like some kind of wrestling Superman in jorts, Cena overcame the odds time and time again, each time being more hard to swallow than the last. There was the time he was stabbed by Carlito's mate in a club with a pissy blade and he just wore a plaster over his wound for a couple of weeks, never mind every single match where he would get battered for 15 minutes, hit his 5 moves of doom and get the win at the last second to the delight of many, and the displeasure of many too. Things went a bit too far though when everyone's favourite locker room hero JBL decided to hit Cena with a car. No, we're not talking about running him over a la Steve Austin and Rikishi. JBL battered Cena, sat him down and ploughed a car square into his head. What made this so disturbing was the way it was shot and handled. JBL being so driven by anger that he attempted to murder his rival, one thing, but after doing the deed, instead of wringing his hands and cackling like a subpar Ted DiBiase, JBL looked genuinely concerned and horrified by what he had done, and quickly fled the scene. And then, all the drama was undone a week later when Cena walked out like nothing had happened and probably made some kind of crass poo joke or something. Number 5, Undertaker tries to embalm Austin. That's right, kids, it's time for more spooky shenanigans from your favourite neighbourhood Undertaker. We mentioned before about the whole Undertaker crucifying Stone Cold thing, but what was more disturbing was the time on live television when Taker and Paul Bearer drugged Austin and intended to embalm him. For those unaware, embalming is a process after death in which the body is preserved by morticians. Think ancient Egyptian mummies or important political figures who are laid to rest publicly so supporters can pay their respects, and you'll catch my drift. So I think you'll agree that attempting to do that to a living person is very messed up, and not something that should be part of a wrestling TV show. Undertaker and Austin's rivalry in 1998 was very intense, and sometimes gets a little overlooked due to the Austin-McMahon storyline that ran concurrently. The two hated each other and routinely went above and beyond to attack one another with increasing malice and ferocity. But embalming another person though, that just takes the piss. So Taker and Bearer had successfully rendered Austin unconscious, kidnapped him and took him to a funeral home, ready to kill him with massive needles like big crazed horror scientists. The tension was unbearable, and just as the two spooky lads were ready to insert the first injection, Kane rushed in to deliver some big red justice, saving the Texas rattlesnake at the last second. Yes, when recapped like that, it sounds a bit hokey, like a 60s Batman episode or a crap James Bond parody, but it was genuinely unsettling when it aired, cementing Undertaker's status as one of the most terrifying wrestling personalities of all time. The big scary weirdo. Number 4, Katie Vick. I know, but we can't avoid the Katie Vick saga on a list like this as much as I would like to. Everybody knows this story like the back of their hand. All anyone has to say is Katie Vick, and the collective wrestling world groans as one. So infamously horrible was this angle that even Vince There's No Such Thing as Backstory in WWE McMahon uttered that fateful name on a recent episode of SmackDown to the delight and displeasure of us all. So yeah, Katie Vick. This angle is well remembered because of how crass and distasteful it was back in 2002, and was the kind of storyline you would have never expected from a wrestling company. Even Paul Heyman at ECW's notorious height would have never even contemplated it. But let's step away from the uber wrestling bollocks of it and the whole Triple H dry humping a mannequin in a coffin segment and boil it down to its base elements: drink driving, manslaughter, necrophilia. A far cry away from the family-friendly days of the Bushwhackers licking people's heads, we're sure you'll agree. The Katie Vick story is just horrible in every sense of the word, and had the Triple H hump bit not been played so blackly comical, it would have been far more disturbing than it proved to be, which was still pretty disturbing. Let's swiftly move on, shall we? Number 3, KANE and JR. You have to feel for Jim Ross. Between Vince habitually taking the piss out of him and Ed Ferrara's despicable Oklahoma gimmick in WCW, it seems like everyone's favourite barbecue sauce salesman has been a lightning rod for cheap heat throughout his career. However, sometimes it does work. JR is a sympathetic character, and for many of us, a warm voice from our childhood, which is why it was pant-poopingly petrifying when an unmasked feral Kane decided to turn good old JR into the Fantastic Four's Human Torch. At the time, Kane had been a big man babyface for a while, but after unmasking on Raw, turned into an unstoppable psychotic ball of rage. To get this new evolution of the Big Red Machine across, he needed to do something despicable. So during an interview with Jim Ross, Kane snapped, threw Jim Ross to the floor, covered him with gasoline, and set the man on fire. By God! To be fair, this entire list could have been disturbing moments involving everyone's favourite big red monster, but that would have been too easy, wouldn't it? There was the time he set a cameraman on fire, the time he set Undertaker's casket on fire, the time he threatened to set himself on fire, basically a lot of incidents involving human beings being set on fire, really. The JR incident stands out amongst the rest though because of the horror of the situation. This wasn't some anonymous gimp getting set on fire then running off, this was good old JR wrestling sleepy horny uncle, helplessly turning into a simmering barbecue joint, and it absolutely terrified many viewers at home. And that is despite the daft audio overdubbing of JR yelping. Number 2, Pillman's Got a Gun. Brian Pillman's loose cannon gimmick was ahead of its time, and has been replicated to various levels of success since his untimely death in 1997. What made Pillman such an enrapturing watch was how real and off-script his act was. Whether it was jostling Bobby Heenan in WCW and causing him to drop F-bombs down the mic on commentary, turning up in ECW and threatening to get his willy out, or the infamous Booker Man match with Kevin Sullivan in 1996, Pillman commanded the audience's attention whenever he was on screen. But it all went a little too far in his feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin. The two once teamed in WCW as the Hollywood Blondes, one of the most underrated tag teams of the 1990s. Their careers soon took different paths before reuniting in WWE in 1996. Pillman soon aligned himself with Austin's nemesis Bret Hart, and the former WCW tag champs got into a big old scrap. It quickly went weird though. After Austin Pillmanized Pillman and put him on the shelf, the loose cannon started taunting Stone Cold from his home. Austin decided that he needed to turn up, wreck the gaff, and batter Brian in front of his family because, of course he did. Pillman wasn't going to take this lying down though, and when Austin arrived, Pillman pointed a gun at him as onlookers screamed in terror before the camera feed was cut. That's right, WWE implied on live television that a wrestler shot another wrestler during a home invasion. The angle felt very, very real, a bit too real really, and led to a lot of concerned complaints. Vince McMahon, the WWE, and Brian Pillman all subsequently apologised for the entire angle. Number 1, Mankind attacks JR. While we all prefer to think of Mankind as the hapless sock-wielding, tie-sporting, hardcore icon, older viewers will recall how unsettling Mankind was when he first made his way to WWE in 1996. Long before the days of Mr. Socko, Mick Foley's demented alter ego was a strange, erratic individual raised in a boiler room and cast aside by society. His matches saw him tearing out his own hair and ended with soft piano music to provide a chilling full stop to the violence that had just unfolded. In an effort to appeal to Mankind's humanity, Jim Ross conducted a sit-down interview with Mrs. Foley's baby boy across 4 segments on Raw in June 1997 in order to get to know the man behind the mask. It did not go well. Speaking quietly and in a beaten tone like a wounded dog, the lines were blurred between the real Mick Foley and the tortured Mankind. Towards the end of the interview, Mankind became irate and started yelling at JR, accusing the commentator of being smug and manipulative before launching at him and choking him with the mandible claw. Mankind's pig squeals as he chokes JR are terrifying to this day, as production staff screamed and fled the interview set in horror. What made the moment all the more disturbing though was Mankind snapping out of his insane state and cradling Ross while meekly asking for help. And this was not played for laughs. It wasn't over the top and slickly produced like WWE is today. It felt grimy and gritty, and it made it all the more horrific. One of the most visceral moments in WWE history and one of its greatest triumphs, this segment turned Mankind from a spooky villain into one of the most complex characters the business has ever seen.